Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. My name is Bruce Waller, and I am your host, where I'm getting to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in the community. How did they get started in their careers, and what are they doing to continue to accelerate as a leader? And today I'm talking to my good friend, Yvonne Freeman. Yvonne Freeman is the VP of the People Department at Sabre, where she oversees global total rewards and HR operations. And I am super excited to have you on the show today. Hey, how you doing, Yvonne?
Good. It's like Men in Blazers.
Right? It's like
fun. I'm good.
Last time I saw you, we were having a North Texas relocation meeting out at Sabre, and it seems like forever ago since I've seen you. So for those that don't know much about Sabre, can you share a little bit about who Sabre is and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So Sabre is a global company. We're based in South Lake here in the Dallas area. And we have team members all around the world, over 60 countries, almost 8,000 employees, team members. But I think what's really cool about us is, you know, our tagline, which I love, is we make travel happen. We are, whether you travel for work or for personal, for leisure, you encounter us all the time when you're shopping for flights, making reservations. You know, if you work for an airline or any of the travel companies, and you're trying to get your job done to service the customer, you're hitting up Sabre and our technology. So a technology company that happens to be in the business of travel. So kind of a really cool thing. Back in the day, an American Airlines spinoff, a little trivia there. And so that's why I think a lot of people in the Dallas area do know Sabre, but don't know us because they don't experience us firsthand. They're experiencing us secondhand through other products and services that they buy.
Well, I know it's a pretty cool company. Every time I go out there, you can always feel the incredible culture at the company. And so, hey, I want to start, you know, I know where you are today. You are leading a big team in the HR space, but I want to go back. I want to go back and I want to hear the Yvonne Freeman story, where it all started. You know, where did you grow up, and what led you to the world of HR? I would love for you to share that story to start out.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. And I know you're asking because it's what you do, but I also know you know a little bit of my crazy story. So it's always entertaining. So I am actually born and raised in the Northeast. I'm from New York. I stayed there through high school. I have 3 brothers. My mom and dad were there. I'm first generation American. Both my parents are immigrants, came here kind of out of the World War II kind of arena. And I came to college in Texas to kind of get away from family, not always a good decision, and to come to the warm weather. And I went to the University of Dallas, and I've essentially stayed here ever since. I did a few year stint in California, followed my not yet husband out there. So we came back to Dallas. A lot of our friends are here. I majored in math. But I answered an ad out of college, like every good graduating student does, to just try to get a job. It was a recruiting job. And so that was how I kind of got exposed to the world of HR. It was literally cold calling in a kind of a lower end financial job of the job market, and headhunting, if you will. So trying to get employers to hire my candidate and then pay a fee. So that was how I got exposed to it. When I moved to LA, I actually transferred with the company that I worked for, and ended up leaving that position because, as you know, when your local market customer base is how you get stuff done, and you go to another market, you start over, it's a little bit of a pivot point. So I got a job with Mattel in the HR department, and I've kind of stayed in that stream ever since. So I've worked for Mattel, came back here, worked for a small consulting, affirmative action consulting business, another small technology company, tiny. And then I worked for TI, Texas Instruments, great company. But we worked at the Louisville plant, which we shut down in '99. And then I hopped over to Michaels and spent a long time at Michaels. Great company, great learning opportunity. And then about a year and a half ago, moved over to Sabre.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You know, I wanted to preface that by we have known each other for over 10 years. We met when you were at when you were at Michael's stores. But it's interesting. I still learn from you every time we talk, and I just find it fascinating. You know, you mentioned that you started out in recruiting, and that's cold calling. That's the tough stuff, right?
Totally. Yep. That's exactly what it was. It was taking a candidate's profile, getting on the phone and saying, hey, I've got a great person. I think you should meet this person. I mean, nothing like, and you never want to call HR. You're always trying to call the hiring manager, because the hiring manager is the one that's like, hey, this person called me. They've got a great candidate. And then the HR person would be like, why are you talking to those recruiters? I'm like, so, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, one of the things I like to ask the guests, and I think that many of us during our career, we're just kind of like, I wrote the book, Find Your Lane, right? They're trying to find our lane, trying to find, our purpose or our calling. And I was just wondering, was there a time, I mean, you've pivoted, you've navigated through some massive companies. Was there a time when you said, you know what, I really like this HR stuff. I really like what I'm doing. Was there a moment?
I mean, honestly, I think it was truly that first job, because every role I've had in HR has been a balance of kind of help the business and the process and the function, but also help the people. And when you're a headhunter or cold calling recruiting person, you're trying to help somebody get a job. So right away, you're helping a person, right? But so making that connection, if you will, between the person and the hiring company, it starts really early on. The most basic HR function you can have, which is hiring. And when I say basic, like the beginning of the experience. I think after that, when I moved out, when I started at Mattel, I started as a temp in the recruiting department, and it was through knowing someone. And I think, I guess I could have been assigned to any other area, right, in the company, but because I started there, immediately it was greeting candidates, helping them prep for their interview, kind of, we call it sending them upstairs to the hiring managers. And I just kind of continued. I mean, I think right away, I this about me, I like connecting people and kind of helping them. But I've been lucky enough in my roles in HR to stay connected to the problem solving, kind of design, process oriented part of it. So it's always been a good balance between the people side of it and also the kind of design, construction, problem solving part of it, which is a good balance. I like that balance.
Yeah, you're so good at that. There's many times where me and you will be having a conversation and you'll be like, have you looked at it this way? Or have you thought about this? And I can just see your mind just working there, thinking through that process. I love that. You talk about, you don't know if, when you got that recruiting job, the person that kind of led you there, you never know how that's all going to work out, as you're connecting to different people. But I'm always curious about like mentoring or people that have like helped you along the way. Were there some people that have helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think when you're early in your career and someone's mentoring you, and I'm going to date myself a little bit. I don't know that mentoring was a hot thing early in my career, which was the early 90s. But I think what I experienced, so I grew up as a swimmer and a tennis player, right? So I grew up around coaches. My dad coached me, told me you can do anything the guys can do, because I have 3 brothers. So it's more like, in today's society, he used to say it's your brain that matters more than your physical kind of strength. And so he was always kind of, I guess from an early age, coaching me how to play tennis and how to swim better, but learning from, there's people higher up than you or across that you can learn from. I think I experienced that at an early age when I didn't even know I was experiencing it. So then I think when I went into the workforce and formally kind of started a career, if you will, coming out of college, I was lucky enough to work for a couple really strong leaders who, for whatever reason, took the time to give me advice on how to do things better, be more effective in the role, and was probably being mentored without, and not through performance appraisal, formal feedback, but through coaching and mentoring. And I think it's in those moments that you start to, before you become somebody who can really mentor someone, I think you start being developed as an appreciation for the value of mentoring. So I think I was being mentored before I knew I was being mentored. And when you get to work for a couple of people like Pat Zender, Joe McKay, like early in my career, then you wake up about 5-10 years into your career and you're like, hey, I became an HR consultant, an HR business partner. And now for a living, you're providing feedback and coaching, sometimes in difficult scenarios, but sometimes just in, day-to-day coaching conversations. And then it just becomes a part of what you do, not just who you are, but what you do. So yeah, very fortunate in that sense.
Yeah, no, I love that. I was the coaching. I can really relate to that because I'm a big fan of John Wooden books. I got great mentoring from my high school football coach, and so I can really relate to coaching and that's what I kind of look at like HR leaders as well, as like you're in that coaching space, trying to coach other leaders within the organization, how to do things, just do work better, right? And how to get the most out of themselves.
Yeah, look, I think the function of HR hopefully has evolved from an administrative partner to a coaching business partner. And it's kind of funny that I think when you work in HR for any amount of time, you become accustomed to, hopefully you get good at it, right? And HR becomes just someone who's not in HR, it's a scary thing. Like, how do I navigate through this? What do I say? What do I do to maybe help my people or to stay out of hot water? Whatever it is that the purpose is, I think you become, even though I usually tell people everybody is HR, right? A lot of times it's, as an HR person, how can I help them? And it combines knowing the rules and the competitive practice around HR and coupling that with, well, listening, help me understand what's your scenario. Let's kind of talk through it and let's help you kind of get out of it so you can get back to whatever the business at hand is of selling or creating or, their day job, their non-HR kind of part of their job. So.
No, I love that. Steve Brown just put out a book called HR Rising. He was talking about how HR is really in the relationships of the reports, and he was referring to that itself. He was referring to coaching and being a better coach, and that's what makes a great HR leader. Speaking of leadership, I want to kind of talk a little bit about, you've worked for some incredible organizations, right? You talked about the Michael stores, Sabre, you talked about Mattel, you talked about TI. You've been around some incredible leaders. And, one of the things that I try to do is I try to pull out, what does good leadership look like? So some of the listeners and viewers can kind of hear, like, what does that look like? And how can I become more like that? And so I was just wondering if you could maybe share some just different common, is there a common thread, number one, and number two, just some leadership traits from some of the great leaders that you've been around?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I think hopefully what it parallels is if people on my team, whether my current team or teams I've led in the past, that they would say, yeah, that's how Yvonne leads. Because I think you want to, I try to lead how I want to be led. And part of that is, it's a combination of kind of support me, like have my back, understanding some of the jobs or roles that people on my team have done gives you a tactical set of empathy to approach with it. So I kind of know what they're facing. I know what it's like to try to get some of their jobs done. I know kind of the challenges they face. And I think when you bring that to the table, I've had people kind of coach me and say, don't just correct what I do or take it and run with it, but help me figure out how to make it better. So don't just do it for me, but help me figure it out so that I become better, right? It's kind of like teaching them how to fish. And I think hopefully what I do for my teams is what others have done for me is help me identify the obstacles in the way, whether it's obstacles I've personally put there or others have put in my way that I think I can't get something done. Because I think that's what a leader kind of does, right? But then I also think give you feedback, whether it's praise and recognition feedback, or it's, hey, there's some things you could do differently, because none of us are perfect. You know, find that person and they don't exist. And so I think it's feedback, empathy, kind of listening. And listening can show up in many different ways. I think listening isn't just when you hear somebody say or do things, but it's like picking up on what you see happening, going on, and checking in with people, especially in this really strange time. I mean, you and I have connected a couple of times. It's good to check in with people and say, you know, I haven't heard from you in a while. Is it, like, am I making assumptions? Is everything okay? And I think it's more challenging to do today, but that it goes back to listen in ways that it's not just ask a question, get an answer. It's you got to have a little bit of that intuition of what am I reading into it, kind of what's going on. I think that's super important. And then I think, look, as an HR person, HR is not easy to learn in school. You come out and you learn it on the job. And so I think having people expose you to scenarios or situations or why they approach something the way they did, and sharing their experiences, I think that's where you grow exponentially, because you only have so much time and so many experiences you're individually going to experience. And so sharing, people have shared with me, I share with others, like you and I share with each other all the time. And I think when we hang up the phone or we close the video, like, we're better because of it, because we have another kind of perspective or professional memory in the toolbox, so to speak, to draw upon.
I absolutely love that. I love how also you use the word empathy. Satosh Nadella, in his book, I think it was Hit Refresh, he's a leader in Microsoft, talked about empathy is like one of the most important traits that we could have as a leader. And thinking about during this time of pandemic, right? Well,
I think that, you know, that phrase, a stranger is a friend you haven't met. Is that right? If not, you can edit it out. But I think the whole thing is when people kind of meet people more in the moment of where they are and they come up with empathy or seeking to understand, things go a lot smoother than when people kind of dig in and say, you know, it's got to be my way. I mean, I think that's some of what are the challenges that face us today, right? Is that there's two extremes. Well, there's not extremes. There's a lot of gray. There's a lot of middle ground to kind of meet on. And I think that is key to a strong HR partner, is one that if you're a linear thinker and you think the situation's going to go just so, right? When it goes another direction, it can be paralyzing if you're not nimble and kind of ready to go in a different direction. And so I think some of what's made the best people on my teams, or the best HR people I've gotten to follow, are people who, man, they can like pivot, and it's not just quick thinking, because sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. Mm-hmm. But it's somebody who can kind of roll with it a little bit and have that creative solutioning. Otherwise, it's tough, right? That's when things don't go according to plan, is when your plan was A, then B, then C, then D. And then number 5 comes along. You're like, whoa, I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I also love how you talked about, I mean, during this COVID, it's been really difficult just staying connected. And you mentioned something earlier that really resonated, and that is reaching out to different team members. That shows great leadership, and not, where's my report? You know, have you gotten this done? It's, hey, how's it going? Everything going okay?
Yeah. Right. So I think you know this about me. I think a lot of people think I'm an extrovert. I'm actually quite introverted, but that doesn't mean that you can't. But I'm also extremely interested in people. Like I got that gift of gab from my mother, and I can talk to anybody about almost anything. But I think what is good that you can draw upon in moments of crisis or calm with anyone on your team or anybody that you work with is getting to know somebody. And I think so many times people show up and they want to have a status and they want to go through the list of things they have to work on. But in the beginning, you got to say, okay, how's it going? How's it doing? Because those things you don't intentionally talk about are the things that people are going to remember when another company calls them, or remember when you call them in a crisis and it's Sunday and you're asking them to go above and beyond and do work. I mean, that's tough. I do think, to me, that comes natural. I like that. So I like knowing, as much as people want to share what's going on in their lives. I think, look, we spend a lot of time with the people we work with. And I think while it feels good, I think it also builds understanding of how they're wired and what makes them tick. And I think it helps you lead people better when you know your team's better. So yeah, it feels good, but it also helps you be a better leader. And I think personally, those are the kind of people that I want to work for. So why not be like that?
That's fantastic. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's fantastic.
There you go.
Right.
Better said.
Zig Ziglar gets the credit on that one.
Right.
So, okay. So we're talking about leadership. We're talking about these common traits, and these are fantastic. What about, I mean, you're on a team, right? You have all these great leaders. You're leading the organization. You're part of this high performing team. What makes up a high performing team, in your opinion?
Well, a good HR person knows
Start
when to
with the
leverage.
good HR person. I
No,
love it.
I didn't mean it like that. That was okay. I think a good HR person would never leave a conversation without talking about diversity. And I think diversity of thought and approach is something I'd really focus on. And I think one of the first things I told the team when I started, because I had left a company I was at for a long time. And when I came, I said, look, I know a lot about HR, but I don't know a lot about how we do things at Sabre. And good ideas can come from anywhere. Like, you gotta be humble enough to ask the team, like, help me get kind of educated, but also tell me where our friction points are. Tell me where the things are that we can do better. And then let's, tell me the things that you go home and gripe about because they're a pain, and let's fix those. Let's kind of get to those. So I think a lot of what makes a good HR person in that equation and a strong team is you have different people that are good at or have different strengths, and knowing how to bring them together and leverage. Like, if we're all the same, we're not as effective, in my personal opinion, my humble opinion, as people with different strengths. Like, I'm decent at, technology, but not the best. So when you need, or like building a good story in a PowerPoint, or, talking to somebody through a difficult conversation, there's different skill sets you need. And I think in my team, whether it's the one I manage now or the one I led before, I think having a diverse set of talents and skills, so that based upon the situation at hand, I mean, I just got off a call a little while ago, and we need a fix done in a certain area. And I think it's not that the team that's there can't do it, but bringing somebody else with another skill set from the other team, who, by the way, will view it as a developmental opportunity. So they're like, hey, thanks for that challenge, right? And they come out with a win where they get to work together, and you kind of break down a little bit of the historical silos. That, to me, is how you get better, and 1 + 1 = 3, and you come out stronger. I think when people stick to themselves and they just, they don't share ideas, and they don't, I think it's not building a higher performing team. And then, of course, I'll end that little section with, this about me. If you don't approach people like customers, then you'll lose all day long. And I think for me, a high performing team is one that we are all customers somewhere in our lives. If we don't approach HR like a marketing customer business, then I think that's where people choose to shop or / go work somewhere else. So high performing HR teams are ones that treat employees like customers.
I love that. Tony Bridwell, I know you know Tony well. He once said the customer experience will never exceed the employee experience.
Right.
And that's right on with what you're saying. That's fantastic. This is great. I want to shift gears just a little bit, because I want to, one of the things I've noticed that great leaders do is they volunteer. They serve other organizations. You're a former board member. I wanted to share this story real quick. I know I gave you a little bit of information before we got on, but I didn't mention this. But back in 2012, when I became the president for Dallas HR, which is the third largest SHRM organization in the country, the president had an option to bring on an advisor. And so I asked Yvonne Freeman to come on as an advisor. And that was really impactful for me because when you came on, you looked at things through a leadership lens from the HR leadership. And you didn't come in and say, hey, here's all the stuff you need to do. You came in and you said, hey, have you ever thought about this? Hey, what about this? And you were like just peppering me with questions. And it really made me, number one, it made me appreciate someone coming in and advising, and it taught me how to be a good advisor. And so, so you served on the board for Dallas HR. You served on many boards, but right now you're a couple of areas that I wanted to talk about today was your volunteering, your volunteer leader with Carry the Load, and then also with the Neuro Assistance Program Foundation that you're part of. And so I was just wondering a couple of things. One, can you why is it important to be involved in? I mean, you're a busy person. Why is it important to give that time into volunteer leadership? Number one, and number two, can you talk a little bit about those organizations?
Yeah. I mean, I have an issue with saying no. So, and we'll do.
Me too.
But I think an issue with it in a really good way is, So I think a little credit to my husband in that a few years ago we were talking about, the kids are getting older, they're kind of moving on, and you've got work, and then you've got kind of social leisure time. But we were fortunate enough to where, we could carve out a bit of our time and our effort to dedicate to, I would say, more selfless causes like Carry the Load or Neuro Assistance Foundation. And Sean Hearn actually hooked me up with NAF because they had helped a mutual friend of ours and how he had gotten connected to it. And it's a small but mighty local charity. Cindy Cooperman kind of created it, and it's for folks with spinal cord injuries. That kind of helps them. Little known, I mean, you learn through all these, but people who have spinal cord injuries, medical insurance and the network that supports them through the process only gets them so far, but then they live with those conditions the rest of their life. And so returning a quality of life, whether it's through helping them with, the catheter needs they have, or mobility through transportation, or, ramps at their home. I mean, it's the little things that can make a big difference that you can't go to a medical insurance company necessarily and get them to kind of fix that for them. So by being involved in that charity, I'll say this. When the team came and talked to me and said, hey, let's kind of see if this is a fit, I said, look, what I don't have is a lot of time, but what I do have is usually a lot of crazy ideas, as you know, Bruce. And so I'm happy to kind of come to the table and for whatever period of time kind of help with ideas and connections to, as an HR professional, as someone who does know a lot of people in the Dallas area, but to have us kind of help about, just like you said, with the Dallas HR org, think about things maybe a little bit differently. And I'll tell you what, it feels good, but you also learn and see others who, in a lot of ways, I would say are better at it and more giving than me. And it makes you feel good. But also it's, I think it sets a good example for our kids. I think it sets a good example for, there's a lot of ways that you can de-stress, especially in these crazy times. And sometimes making it not about you or being the person who has to make the tough decisions because of the leadership roles you or I sit in, it's nice. It's nice to be somebody who's like, hey, how might I fit in this? Which is then if you shift gears to the Carry the Load organization, which my husband kind of got us connected into, which is more about honoring the sacrifices of kind of our fallen military heroes and first responders. And, I can talk about that all day long. What's really nice about that is you kind of show up as a little bit of it is fundraising, but a little bit of it is respecting the legacy of, that these people have sacrificed at, and honoring what I think people forget coming out of time of crisis, that they're there for you, like they're putting their lives on the line and kind of running in between you and harm's way. And we tend to celebrate that when the crisis happens, but then the rest of the time we forget. And I think one of the most moving parts about that, I think I shared with you, is someone on one of the Carry the Load videos had commented that you kind of die twice, once with a physical death and once when people stop remembering your name. And I thought just how your grandfather, was it your grandfather?
My grandfather, yes. Yeah, I served in World War II.
You had shared the story and was in this really just atrocious, like, catastrophic event, like a bombing and burning the ship, and loss of life so tremendous. I got to tell you, didn't read up ahead of it, before you and I haven't looked at it in a while, but it, like, you have in your family a legacy connection to somebody who sacrificed, right, and didn't get to live that life that we all get to live. So I think honoring that and spending time with that, and whether your cause is pets or helping seniors or military or people with spinal cord injuries, I think it's just, if we don't do it, then who will? And I think each of us is part of the we. So yeah, it feels good. I do have more time in my life than when I was going to PTA meetings. My kids were in first and third grade. So, it's either that or a whole lot more Netflix binging, and, let's carve a little bit of that out and do something that's a little bit more worth your time. So.
Oh, I told my wife, it's amazing how though we can stay busy, even though after our kids leave the house and we come empty nesters and think, oh, what are we going to do now? And we find ourselves busy, but it's in our DNA, right? It's our DNA to serve.
Well, because you have kids coming back to your house. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a little different.
Oh my gosh, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you talking about and just being part of that Carry the Load, because I hadn't even really thought about it, and you reached out and I started reading a little bit, and so I shared with you my grandfather, Waylon Eugene Causey. He died in the war. He had 4 children, and so the one picture that I have here behind me is him holding my mom when she was just a baby. And I can't even imagine my grandmother. I mean, she ended up, she remarried for a very short time, and then she pretty much left, had 5 children throughout her entire life. And I just can't imagine like that pain, like he sacrificed for our country. And so you doing that was really cool. Just seeing somebody out there that like, hey, she's
well, and I mean, it's not about me. It's what's cool is that we get to remember your grandfather and honor him in that way, and others. And I think it's nice that we do that, but it's actually for a moment, at least Memorial Day, if not throughout the rest of the year, remembering them. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said earlier too. I didn't even think about it like that. It's like when the person dies, and then when they're not remembered anymore. And so,
I saw that from the Carry the Load video.
Yeah, I will. I'll actually put these links for these organizations in the show notes if you want to learn a little bit more about Carry the Load and Neuro Assistance Foundation. Absolutely terrific. Yeah. So I was curious, so throughout your entire career, you've talked to a lot of different leaders, and people have given you advice, whether, maybe it's a family member or someone in your career. I was just curious if you could just share what's some advice that you were given, and then you later share that with others along the way.
It's a good question. I think you and I have actually talked about this a couple of times, and I think being as somebody who's not as early in my career as we are now, how about that as a way to say it? I think advice that I'd give to either my younger self or advice that people gave me, or as advice, is that not to be as afraid or lacking as much confidence. And I think I come across as a confident person, but I think 25 years ago, not having that level as being someone who kind of new in their career or experiencing it. And I certainly grew up with enough confidence to where it was there, it just continued to grow, but not everybody has that, including myself back then. And so I think, for someone to believe in you and give you that advice and kind of lift you up, and I think it goes back to mentoring. The advice that I would give others is maybe to not be as worried or is afraid of what might happen if you actually get what you wish for, or something that happens, right? And think about all of us stuck in what I call Coronaville right now, right? There's so many things that we can't do, hopefully temporarily, and those things that we might branch out or help somebody or get involved, or they're temporarily taken away from us. You and I talked a lot about saying yes to things. I think that's a lot of kind of the fun path that's led you to this. I think being there for people, there's those stories about you need different kinds of friends, right? Well, I think the friendship that you and I've had, both professionally and personally, has always been, we both have done this, like, well, why not? Like, why not do that? Why wouldn't you? Why not try? And I think that sometimes people need to hear that even when they're not asking you that. And that goes back to, we call them one-on-ones. You have a one-on-one, you have a status meeting. I think when you pause, take a moment to kind of say, so what's on your mind? What are you up to? I think you have to find those moments when people are actually asking for help and advice without saying, hey, can I get some advice? And maybe say back to them, so I kind of here's what you're thinking, what you're saying, I hear you saying is this. Maybe give them advice, because I think sometimes people need it when they don't really know that they need it. So hopefully that makes sense.
Why not? Why not? I love it. Oh man, I could sit here and do this all day long, but we've got about 5 or 10 minutes left from the show. And so this is a section I like to call It's Time to Accelerate. And I just wanted to ask you a few questions. And the first question is, in your, with all that time you have on your hands, right? Book or podcast, what do you prefer?
So if I want to be like a little bit more quiet time, I think I'd rather have a book, because I'm a little more old school. I like the feel of a paper book page turning experience. But I will tell you that when you want a little bit more interaction, it's almost like when you're talking to somebody, then I do like, I'm a big fan of Shonda Rhimes. I would put that, or Tina Fey, I'd put that book in my ear in a heartbeat. And then it's like you're spending time with somebody. So it just depends. Do you want to be kind of more on your own and reflective? To me, that's a book, because you can control the speed you go at, versus the other ones, to me, is a little bit more interactive. So I'm not choosing. I'm giving you a reason for both.
Hey, that's okay. I love it. I love it. Okay. How about a favorite food?
Favorite food? Well, so I'm a Polish girl, and my whole family knows on Christmas Eve we have borscht and uszka, and it's a Polish tradition. It's kind of like a mushroom type tortellini for people who have no idea what I was talking about. And yeah, that's one of my favorites. It's a little weird, but that's one of my favorites.
Fantastic. I don't think I've had that before. I may have to check that out.
I don't think many people have.
How about a favorite place to visit? I know before COVID, you were getting to visit some of the different offices around the country. Do you have a favorite place that you've visited or like to visit?
So this one, transparency, which I love transparency. You told me this one ahead of time, and I'm going to take a little bit different spin on it and say, I think I've traveled more than I would have thought at first. I think my husband and I do like to travel, and because I work for a travel type company, I'll say this, that I was connected to Sabre long before I knew. And some of the really fun places that I've been, so I've been cycling in Ireland, old school cycling, not motorcycling, like pedal. I've gone to Molekini, which is one of the top 10 dive sites in the world. It's in Hawaii. Been to Wimbledon, which is London. Saw my brother play center court, right? I'm at top of the World Trade Center before 9/11, which is really cool. Rome is, I would move to Rome in a heartbeat, like near and dear to my heart, that. But I think, ultimately, if I could pick a place, it'd be like seaside beach, like seaside, Florida, sorry, white sand, like Lake Beach. That'd be the place I'd want to go. So those are my favorites. But last year, I got to go to Singapore and India, and I took my 82-year-old mom who ran her house. She's not made an appearance yet, and let's keep it like that. I love my mother, but I got to take her to Poland on a business trip, and she had not been there. Well, we won't name her age, but she had not been there in 80 years, and that was a special moment for me, special trip. So.
Yeah, well, what a gift that was. What a gift. So let me ask you this. What energizes you?
I like talking to people and being around people and figuring out either what's their story or what connections they have to me or somebody else or a process or a thing. So I'm not a big name your hobby person. I think I'm really about, like, people energize me. People.
Yeah,
it's all about people.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed, even when we were in the Dallas HR organization. You may not necessarily work the room, but you were very curious and go deep in conversation with different people. And that's you for sure.
Well, that's that weird introvert extrovert combo.
I love it. I love it. Well, I have one final question for you. And I love asking my guests this question. And the question is, Yvonne, 10 years older, if she shows up at your door today, what is she telling you?
Good job. Good job. Really. She's going to say that you can do more, you can do better, but you know that you're enough. You're enough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm enough. I know that sounds really kind of cheesy, but I think there's so much pressure for kids in school, coming out of school, then go get a job, have a family, just chill, slow down, and maybe remind myself to do that a little bit more. Because you wake up and it's 4 months later and it's July and we're living in what we're living in. So yeah, I would hope that my future self, it's so weird. It's such a Matthew McConaughey Oscar speech. Go Google that moment. What would your future self say to you? I think it's like, you're doing a good job. And yeah.
I absolutely love that answer.
I know that sounds crazy,
not at all. I was actually finishing a 10K last week, and the first time I'd run a 10K. And I remember after about 3 miles, I was wanting to give up. And I remember at the very end, I was saying to myself, good job, Bruce, good job. And that's what I'm hoping, right? So when you say that, I'm like, man, that's right on. I love it.
Well, that just shows you we need to get out more.
Exactly. Well, listen,
I
know we need to go around telling ourselves more of that. Good job. Good job. Hey, this has been a treat.
Why? Because here's why. Because typically somebody's going to come to the door, and what's the advice they're going to give you? They're going to tell you, what you could have done better, what you could do differently. How nice would it be for somebody to just come and say to you, good job. And then you'd be like, okay, but what else? What else? No, how about just good job?
Just pause, just enjoy it.
I know, let's just leave it there.
Yeah.
Good job.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Listen, you are a delight. You are definitely driving in the leadership lane. I've always admired you. I've always respected you. And I've appreciated not only our business partnership, our friendship, and I just appreciate you coming on and just sharing perspective with everybody today. It's been an honor.
Well, thanks for letting me play. I love talking to you. You're always fun. So thank you for that. Thank you for the gift.
Can't wait to share. Appreciate you, my friend.
All right. We'll talk soon.